Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about 4 new operators, and these are also Boolean operators, or I can say that the result of these operators will be a Boolean value. These 4 operators are equality operator, inequality operator, exact equality operator, and exact inequality operator. Okay, let's start with the first one. Equality operator basically checks whether two values, or I can say two variable values, are equal or not. So this checks if the values are equal. And if the values are equal, it will return true, otherwise it will return false. Equality operator is represented by double equal to sign. So wherever you see this double equal to sign, or I can say two equal signs together, you can say that it is a comparison which is done using equality operator. So it is going to compare two values and it is going to return true if the values are equal, otherwise it is going to return false. For example, let's consider we have two integers here, num1 and num2. As you can see, both have a value 5. So what are we doing here? We are comparing these two numbers using the equality operator, which is double equal to. And if these two numbers are equal, the result will have a value true, otherwise it will have a value false. Let's execute this code and let's see how it works. I'm going to execute this whole code. And if you see the result, here we are getting our num1 and num2 equal and it is coming as true. And here if you see, we have printed our num1 and num2 equal and then we printed the value of result. Result is nothing but the value which is coming after comparing these two numbers, right? And as we know that these two numbers have the same value, which is 5, which is why we are getting true here. Now let's try one more thing. What we can do, we can actually update value of one of these numbers. So instead of 5, I'm updating num2 to 10 and then I'm performing the same operation. Let's execute this code quickly. And if you see, this time I'm getting the result as false. So this time we are getting the result as false here. Why? Because num1 and num2 now have different values. This is very simple. If the values are same, equality operator will give you true. If the values are different, equality operator will give you false. Now let's move on to the next operator, which is inequality operator. Inequality operator basically checks if the value of two variables is not the same. For example, we have two numbers here, or I can say two variables, num1 and num2. The value of num1 is 5 and the value of num2 is 10. And if I do num1 not equal to num2, so this is represented by not equal to, like this sign. So this is our not sign, right? And this is the equal to sign. So if you remember in the previous tutorials, we discussed about this not sign as well. This is where we discussed it, right? The not operator. So here we are checking if the two numbers are not equal. And if that's the case, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. So not equal to operator is represented by this sign, which is not and then equal to. And equality operator was represented by double equal to sign. Let's execute this code snippet and then it will be more clear to you. What we are doing here, we just have two numbers, num1 and num2. We are checking if num1 is not equal to num2. If that's the case, it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. Let's execute this code. And if you see, I think I am getting an error here. Variable does not exist result. Okay, so we need to define this variable because I'm just executing this snippet. Let's execute this code now. So if you see, the result of not equal is coming as true because num1 and num2 are not equal. Okay. In case they are equal, then the result will be false. Let's execute this quickly once again. So if you see, now the result is coming as false. So that's all we had about equality and not equality operator. They are represented by double equal to and not equal to. And one checks if the two values are equal and the other one checks if the two values are not equal. Now let's talk about exact equality operator. Exact equality operator basically checks if the two operands that are there with exact equality operator, they both refer the same location in the memory, then this result will be true, otherwise it will be false. It will be more clear with an example. So let's say that we have two integers, okay? Let's say we have this integer 1, which is referring this box in the memory, and we have this integer 2, which is referring this box in the memory, okay? Now these two integers are referring different boxes, right, or different locations in the memory. Though their value can be the same, so these two can be 5, okay, but they are referring different locations in the memory. So in this case, exact equality operator will give us false. If there are two variables which are referring to the same location, let's say we have another variable c, which is referring to the same box or same location in the memory. In that case, the exact equality operator will give us true. This exact equality operator is represented by three equal to's. So instead of having 2 equal to's, this is represented by 3 equal to's. Let's take a look at the code quickly. So if you see, I have defined two numbers, num1 and num2, both have a value 5, like we did here. And then we are checking if these two numbers are exactly equal or not. So here we are using the exact equality operator. Let's execute this code and let's see what happens. So if you see, I'm getting one error here. And the error basically means that exact equality operator only allowed for reference types. Okay. What does this error mean? This error means that exact equality operator can only be used with reference types. And by reference we mean non-primitive data types. Non-primitive data types. You have already heard about primitive and non-primitive data types in the previous tutorials, right? If you remember in the previous tutorials where we were talking about data types, we had a word about primitive and non-primitive data types. And all of these like Boolean, integer, decimal, double, long, date time, time, ID, string, object, blob, which are already defined for us in Salesforce. They all are primitive data types. So what can be a non-primitive data type? Or I can say a reference type. These can be list, map, set, or I can say any user-defined data type. These are called reference types, or I can say non-primitive data types, because while assigning a value to these variables, you're also defining the memory location, or I can say you are also giving the memory to the variable which is getting the value. For example, let's talk about this list. Okay, so I'm going to clear this, and what I'm doing here, I'm creating a list here. So list of string words1 is equal to new list, and if you see, this list has two values, Richard and Hendrix. Now I'm talking about another list, so list of string word2, and this list is pointing to the earlier list only. So what I have done here, I have created a list in the memory, and this list is nothing but a reference type, or I can say non-primitive data type. Why? Because we are using the new keyword here. So this is another way to remember it. That if you are using a new keyword, that means you are assigning or you are initializing the memory for this variable, which is defined right here. Okay. So you are giving it memory as well as the value. So this is a non-primitive, or I can say a reference type. Now in this list of string, we have two values. We have Richard and we have Hendrix. So let's say I'm saying R for Richard and H for Hendrix. And then we have a variable which is known as words1. So we have a variable here which is known as words1, and this variable which is defined right here is pointing to this particular list which is defined in the memory. Okay. Now what I'm doing, I'm creating a new list of string variable which is words2, and this words2 is pointing to words1, or I can say it is also pointing to the same list in the memory. I have another variable which is words2, and this variable is also pointing to the same list in the memory. And then I'm using the exact equality operator, which is equal to check whether these two words are exactly equal or not, or I can say whether these two variables are exactly equal or not. Let's execute this code and this will be more clear. So if you see, I'm getting a true here. And why I'm getting a true? Because these two words, which is word1 and word2, they are pointing to the same memory location, or I can say they are pointing to a list which is present at a single location in the memory. Now let's try something else. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to assign a new list to my words2 variable. Okay, so I'm going to assign a new list having the same values. So this is also having same values, Richard and Hendrix, and this is also having same values, Richard and Hendrix, but I'm going to assign this new list to my words2 variable. Earlier what happened, words1 was pointing to this list, words2 was pointing to this list, but now we are saying that instead of pointing to this list for words2, it is pointing to a new list. Though I can say that both of these lists have the same values. So this is also having Richard and Hendrix, and this is also having Richard and Hendrix stored in this. Okay, but the memory location of both these lists are different. Let's execute this code and let's see what happens now. So I'm going to execute the whole code from here till here, and if you see, initially when I checked words1 and words2 are equal, it is coming as true. Words1 and words2 are equal, it is coming as true. This means that both of these variables are pointing to the same memory location. So that was the initial case. Now I assigned a new list having the same values to my words2 variable, and I checked it again. Are words and words2 equal or exactly equal? So this time the result is coming as false. Why it is coming as false? Because now my words2 variable is pointing to a new list in the memory. Okay. So what does exact equality operator do? Exact equality operator basically checks the references or the memory location of the variable to make sure that they are pointing to the same value as well as the same memory location. Because let's say if both variables are pointing to the same memory location, then we can say that their values will also be the same, right? Because they are pointing to the same thing. So we are not really checking the value here, but we are checking the memory location here, or I can say the references. So this is comparison by reference, and the earlier one was comparison by value. So this was value comparison, and this is reference comparison, or I can say the comparison of references or memory locations. Similarly, we have exact inequality operator. Now, the exact inequality operator will return true if words 1 and words 2, or I can say two variables, this can be any variable, okay? So any two variables are not pointing to the same location. If they are pointing to the same location, then it will return false. So it is the opposite of exact equality operator. Let's try this once. So if you take up these two things, let me just execute the whole code from here till here, okay? So if you see, in case of exact inequality operator, I am saying that if words 1 and words 2 are not equal, or I can say they are pointing to the different memory location, then this will be true, right? And if you see here, this is also coming as true. Why? Because currently I executed the whole code, right? I executed the code from here till here. Okay, so in this case, words 1 is pointing to this list and words 2 is pointing to this list. And these two lists are different in the memory, which is why the exact inequality operator is coming as true, because these two are different lists, or I can say different memory locations. However, if they point to the same memory location, then this will return false. Let me do one thing. I'm just going to comment out this part. So now if you see, words 1 and words 2 both are pointing to the same memory location, or I can say the same list. So let me execute the whole code from here till here, and I can execute this code. And if you see, this time I'm getting a false here. This first system.debug is this one, which is saying words 1 and words 2 are equal. So the exact equality operator is giving us true because these are equal and they're pointing to the same memory location, or I can say the same list, right? But exact inequality operator is giving us false. Why? Because these two variables are exactly equal and they are pointing to the same memory location. So the inequality operator is giving us false. One last thing which I think I forgot to mention, but you might have noticed, is that the exact inequality operator is represented by not equal to sign. Okay. So to summarize, I can say the equality operator is represented by equal to sign. Inequality operator is represented by not equal to sign. Exact equality operator is represented by equal to sign, or I can say three equal to's. And exact inequality operator is represented by not equal to sign, like we have used right here. In this tutorial, we discussed about these four Boolean operators: equality, inequality, exact equality, and exact inequality operators. I hope this tutorial was clear to you. Let me know your feedback in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time when we'll talk about parentheses and ternary operators.